get stuffed. We got nothing to play for. If you say that, you would have
Is
seen that,
that
haven't
Ken
you?
Hinkley?
Yeah, it's Ken Hinkley in
Yeah,
the Geelong League. Yeah, yeah. Just
yeah,
I love that. You. I mean, he's been in the news a little bit, Ken, hasn't he, in the last week?
just a little bit.
But you got to admit, like I've watched that speech a number of times, and you sort of just go, you know, yeah, you can see how
Yeah,
you get up and about playing for him. Um,
hairs on the back of the neck standing up, sort of
oh
stuff.
yeah, oh yeah. I
Yeah.
like that's a pretty good one.
Where does it
Can't.
rate with this Terry Wallace "I'll spew up" speech?
Well, they're very Ken's trying to inspire the team to the win. Terry's just absolutely fuming, but that's a classic. Like if I
Terry's just
see
kicking them all, kicking the whole club while they're down.
if I see one bloke get a pat on the back and a good job, I'll spew up.
All right, g'day everyone. Welcome back to Got the 4 Points. We are well and truly stuck into finals at the moment in season 2024. Quite a few leagues have finished up over the weekend, Pete, and we're going to cover quite a lot of those grand final results from the weekend just gone. Welcome if you're joining us for the first time, or welcome back if you've been watching the show for the last few weeks. Pistol's here with me, mate. Tell me something that caught your eye over the weekend.
Yeah, well, there's lots that caught my eye, so it was tough to narrow down to just one thing. I think on the Saturday I had the audio of um, Collegians versus Old Scotch. I had the footage of Div 1 Paran versus Parkside. And then I was also following live scores of about three or four other finals matches that were being played. But the one that caught my eye was one that I had going on the live scores, which was the Ballarat League, which we've spoken a little bit about. And it was preliminary final day. It was
Yeah.
East Point versus
Hmm.
Darley. And it was something that we've discussed in last week's episode, which was an extra time. So scores all level at the end of the four
Wow.
quarters, and they went into
Hmm.
extra time with a bit of a wind going to one end. East
Hmm.
Point, which we've learnt throughout the week. I know we asked some questions about East Point, about the colours and all that. We did learn that they are a merged club. So thank you for the insight
Yeah.
there from our current listeners. They got into a bit of a head start.
East Ballarat and Golden Point, apparently.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct. So they got a bit of a head start with the wind in the first 5 minute extra time, kicking three goals, which I think
Hmm.
I don't know what the record is for extra time goals, but three in
Mm.
5 minutes has got to be pretty impressive, even with the
Yeah.
wind.
Yeah.
Um, and I just so happened the Div One grand final finished between Paran and Parkside, and I got the live stream up for the Ballarat League, and it was probably the most exciting, 8 minutes in total, I think, but 5 minutes of gameplay that I've watched in a long time,
Yeah.
maybe outside of the Blacks. But like Darley just didn't lie down. They had a Billy Myers, big forward. He was clunking everything just about. You had Brett Bewley, who, boy, he looked impressive. You can see that he played, high level football. He was incredible for Darley, pretty much involved in everything. You had East Point defenders rebounding, just getting it out, taking intercept marks. They ended up getting two goals back. Darley was 7 points
Wow.
down. Maybe had another minute where they had a bit of sustained pressure, moving it inside their forward 50. Couldn't quite get it done. Siren goes. East Point were jubilant. Darley were heartbroken. But it was an incredible game. If that was how the whole four quarters were played, it must have been an incredible game to watch, because the last 8 minutes I got to
Yeah.
watch was
Wow.
incredible. And also, do yourself a favour and check out the website for the Ballarat Footy League. Their match centre is unrivaled from what I've seen so far. So player
Okay.
stats, team stats, all of that for the game is on the match center, along with a replay of the actual live stream. it's impressive. It's really, really impressive. So take note if you're another
Yeah,
football
nice.
league. Ballarat Footy League have got some good stuff going on there. So that's what caught my eyes. What caught your eyes over the weekend, Rob?
A real controversial one caught my eyes, Pete. Not very often that an under 19s grand final makes it onto the mainstream news, but I actually caught this. I caught a whiff of this via a post on Facebook from Channel 10 News, who had featured a little bit of the footage of an under 19s Division 1 grand final, or it might have been Division 2, I can't remember, grand final between the Uni Blues in the VAFA and Old Camberwell. And this grand final was very close through much of the game. Now, the final siren's gone with Camberwell in front. And at that moment, understandably, Camberwell fans around the ground have stormed the field, up and about. They're all excited. They think their team's won a flag. And in the footage, just off in the corner, you can see an umpire, not with two hands in the air signalling the end of the game, but one hand in the air signalling a free kick to the Uni Blues. And it's a little bit unclear to me whether the next action came because of the storming of the field or because a Camberwell player said something. But the umpires paid a 50-metre penalty to the Blues, which has taken them from somewhere in the centre square, it looks like, to a shot for goal about 30 metres out. And look, we're partisan, we're Uni Blacks fans. So, we never usually say lovely things about the Uni Blues, but fair play to this young lad. He went back and kicked the goal. Camberwell players on their knees, heartbroken. Uni Blues supporters, fans, was their turn to storm the field, of course. Um, you have to feel a bit sorry for old Camberwell. I don't know what the story was with that 50-metre penalty. It's definitely caught a lot of people's eyes. Talk about the umpire having an influence on the game. Look, pretty hard done by old Camberwell, but out of all of that, I would say fair play to the young Uni Blues lad who's gone back and slotted that goal. It was fairly much straight in front, but still, he had a kick after the siren to win a premiership for his team, and that's not an easy thing to do, even under those circumstances where everything was sort of chaotic. So that's what caught my eye.
Yeah, that's a great one, and that certainly did. I did see that. I think I saw a VAFA statement that was saying that apparently players that had stormed the field as part of "We've won the game" encroached within that protected zone, which I think is why the 50 was then given, because of that protected zone. I believe
Wow.
that's what I read from the statement. Look, I don't know. You can see it both ways, can't you? I mean, I'm a big advocate for arguing if you pay it in the first minute, you probably pay it in the last minute. But you can also understand how many times do players, fans storm the field on a premiership and probably nothing happens because it's 10 goals to difference, or it's 4 goals to
Yeah.
difference. So it's like, who cares? But um I suppose maybe that's just a little lesson for the Camberwell players, that maybe wait for the umpire to completely call end to the game before you jump on, and maybe that's maybe the coaching staff and whoever their support staff is needed to be holding people back, waiting for. I can only assume as well that it had to have been the players, that because I don't know if you could give a 50 away against a fan, could you? Otherwise, I'm whipping on opposition gear for every game next season. And I'm running direct through every single marking contest you could imagine and getting a free kick for my team. So I can't imagine that as an umpire, you could assume that the fans are from Camberwell.
Mm.
Now, I think, I get how it's pretty obvious they're storming the field to celebrate with the team that's just won, but I don't think it's an assumption you can actually make and be confident that you're always right. So I can only assume it was the fact that players have stormed the field, and have gotten into that protected zone. It's pretty easy to identify who they're with, that's been paid. So But agreed with you, Rob. Fair credit to the lad that's walked back and slotted it through for a goal. Wish it wasn't the Uni Blues. In all honesty, I'm not even going to try and be bipartisan here. But but certainly, I do respect the mettle that the kid has clearly shown to go back and set himself up for 10-year premiership reunions for the next 60, 70, 80 years, and probably won't have to buy a beer at any of those for that time either.
No, that is true. Yeah, it's an interesting point about how they could know, which people had stormed the field or whatever. They're pretty hard done by Camberwell. I mean, the position that the free kick was paid at, there's no way anyone's kicking the goal from there on a windy day.
Yeah.
So, you can sort of see, on the one hand, they might not have realised a free kick had been paid because it really looks like it was on the siren. And secondly, you would be within your rights to think, if you're a supporter or anybody, and presumably the Uni Blues themselves, that, oh well, that's a bit of a useless free kick. But it turns out it wasn't.
No.
Anyway, that's what caught my eye. It's been a controversial one, but Pete, it was not the only grand final on the weekend. We had a lot of very close grand finals, and a lot of exciting premiership droughts were broken. A lot of people played pretty significant roles in country footy from AFL backgrounds. So we've got quite a lot to cover. Why don't we get into some Siren summaries?
All right, Rob. Let's get into some Siren summaries, and I reckon you're going to kick us off and take us to the Mid Gippsland Footy League.
I am, yes. So I'm going to take us down to a lovely little spot called Fish Creek, just north of Wilson's Prom down there. Pete, in the Mid Gippsland League, which isn't that old, I didn't actually look up exactly when it started, but formed as a product of the disbanding of a couple of different leagues down there. Fish Creek had a win over Yinnar on the weekend by 2 points, Pete, 7-4-46 to 6-8-44. Back-to-back flags for Fish Creek. Kangaroos. Never understood why Fish Creek are not called the Fish or the Trout or something, but anyway. The Kangaroos, who wear South Melbourne jumpers, they won their 38th premiership, Pete. They weren't in any danger of losing this title, but they've just enhanced their reputation as the local footy club in Victoria with the most premierships. I haven't got around to working out who's second on the list yet.
What I was just about to ask.
I'm worked out that yet, but I know that Fish Creek are in front with now 38 premierships, so that's very, very impressive. And I did also read, Pete, that their footy club rooms burnt down at the start of the year. Now, as we know, footy club rooms are sacred to any local football netball club. You've got your memorabilia in there, you've got your honour boards, you've got your premiership flags, 37 of them before this one, plus a few reserves and other trophies and pennants, I'm sure, as well. To lose your footy club rooms, I can only imagine, I actually can't imagine how devastating that would be.
Yeah.
So not a club that really needs any luck in terms of winning premierships, clearly, but perhaps this season you can really understand why it would mean a lot to that community.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, I was about to say I thought Fish Creek were red and white. So did you say they're the Kangaroos?
They are, yeah.
Okay. That's confusing, but yeah, funnily enough, I did know that were playing in that premiership because for work I've been doing a little bit of work around the player change rooms for the tennis netball courts that are sitting there, and the lady from the tennis club was saying that that there was a big weekend coming up in Yinnar, and not maybe quite the end they wanted to the big weekend with the 2-point loss. Goes to show good kicking's good football, isn't it? 7-4 to 6-8.
That's true, Pete. Yeah.
You can't help but wonder whether maybe left a little bit out there to get the win.
Yeah. well, Fishy only hit the lead halfway through the last quarter, so we're according to reports in the local paper down there, probably the better side for three quarters, and Fish Creek really took their chances in the last. So, as you say, good kicking, good football, and well, you'd have to say they're a club that knows how to win premierships. So,
Yeah, look,
um,
I think after 38, you could probably make that assumption. I don't think we need to test that hypothesis too much. Um, I think
not
I
any
think
further.
I think we've probably got that one covered. But it'll be interesting to know who's second and whether there's anyone breathing down their neck or whether Fish Creek could maybe take the next 20 years off and come back in 21 years and see where it's at. So that is
Yeah.
very impressive. So congratulations to the red and white Kangaroos. But
The
that'll
red and
puzzle
white
me. But
fish kangaroos.
yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah,
look, if you've got insight, if you're watching this or listening to this and you've got insight into who might be the closest behind Fish Creek in terms of local footy premiership, please let us know.
yeah.
We know Collingwood, Essendon, and Carlton are all on 16 in the AFL. I did actually look up the numbers for one other club I'll talk about a bit later.
Mm.
They're not quite on 38. So look, please let us know. Hit us up on Got the 4 Points Instagram. We'll reply in the comments to this. And I think, Pistol, you're going to take us to another club in red and white now.
Yeah, I am. I'm going to take us to maybe the more aptly named Natty Bialaba Swans.
Yep.
So it makes a little more sense with the red and white in the Maryborough Castlemaine District Footy League.
Yep.
So they played their grand final on the weekend just gone, played against the Trentham Saints. And it was a bit of a one-sided result at the end of the day, which Natty Bialaba had been the class team all season, but it was 2010-130 to Trentham 7-9-51. So
Mm.
it was I was flicking on and off for the live stream for that game. So
Hmm.
yes, for those playing at home, I did have about 8 different devices going on Saturday and Sunday. Um, but yeah, it was one of those ones that every time I flicked over, I was like, well, I don't think that's going to change too much. So they only dropped the one game for the whole season, Natty Bialaba, against Harcourt.
Hmm.
Will Cameron was named best on ground for the match. 2019 was the last time Natty Bialaba won the premiership, so it hasn't been
Yeah.
too long of a break for them. Um, they did break a stem of 3 Harcourt premierships in a row, though, so
Yeah.
have sort of broken that up. Feel a little bit for Trentham. Did a really great job making it to the grand final. They were, I think, close last season from memory. I think they might have been in the prelim last season.
Mm.
Um, they haven't won a premiership since '94. So
Yeah. Okay.
the wait goes on. It's unfortunate for them. I did just want to raise, like, I wonder whether the team that will be kicking themselves is Harcourt. So I feel like it could be a disappointing year for them. They also only dropped the one game.
Hmm.
They were the only team to have beaten Natty Bialaba. They went into that first final against Trentham and lose by 30 points.
Oh, wow. That's quite a big loss.
Quite a big
Yeah.
loss. And
Mm.
then the challenge becomes that puts you in the same side of the draw as Natty Bialaba.
Yeah.
And Natty Bialaba were far too classy in the prelim against
Yeah.
Harcourt. So you
Mm.
can't help but think that maybe Harcourt just didn't quite get enough out of their season by having to play Natty Bialaba in a prelim instead of maybe having a crack at them in the grand final.
Mm.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens there in the wash up for them. But certainly good to see the Swans get another one on the board. I always enjoy, no offense to any of the Harcourt players or fans out there, but I always enjoy when it breaks up a little bit of a streak that's been happening because I think we like to see as many footy clubs getting success over the course of their journey as possible.
Mm.
Um,
Definitely.
so that's where the Maryborough League took me on Saturday.
Yeah. Full credit to Trentham, Pete. I mean, uh, we were growing up in the Castlemaine area, looking at the country footy scores. And so we're talking about 10, 15 years ago. and Trentham were pretty consistently down the bottom of the ladder at that time. So it's been good to see them slowly but surely work their way up the ladder and make their way to a grand final. So that's really good, and it's also interesting. I mean, that it's surprising. It always surprises me how big that league is, given that it's a fairly densely populated part of Victoria. But Trentham
Definitely.
to the Alaba, that's going all the way from the southern Central Highlands all the way up to almost to the southern Grampians. So like it's a really long way.
It's a long trip.
It is a long trip. Um, anyway, no, it's good to see Trentham getting up there again, and especially good on them for beating Harcourt in that first final, like you said. I mean that was really the pivotal moment in Harcourt's season, unfortunately, and
Yeah.
unfortunately for Harcourt. But yeah, that's a for a club that hasn't tasted success in a long time, Trentham. That's probably a good result, and you would have to think that's something they can build on. Um,
Yeah,
coming
definitely.
into next season.
You want to hope
Yeah,
so. But I believe you're also catching some sun, Rob, in the lovely hot part of the state of Victoria, and checking out the Sunraysia Footy League.
haven't been catching any sun personally. Um, I do live in Melbourne. There's not much sun on offer at the moment. But I was previously getting excited about Irimple in our Paddock Premiership segment, Pete, and I jumped on the Irimple bandwagon because they were going for back to back, and also because when we first looked at this Paddock Premiership segment, they'd had a really gripping 2-point win over Wentworth in one of the early finals there. But look, Pete, Imperials were the best team all year in that competition, finished on top of the ladder fairly comfortably. And what I didn't realise, I hadn't done my research well enough. What I didn't realise when I got interested in Irimple initially was that Imperials had actually gone from wooden spooners last season to top of the ladder this season, and they've capped that off with a premiership. So
That's impressive.
congratulations to Imperials. Um, Such similar names, Imperials and Irimple. I'm bound to get them mixed up at some point. Um, yeah, that's a pretty impressive footy league. I read on the league website that there were 5,000 people that went to the game in
Wow.
Mildura. Then I read an article in The Age that said there were 8,000 people. So I'm pretty certain once I read about it in the Herald Sun next week, it'll be 25,000 people. Not
Build a
sure what's
Jeep.
going on there. I think The Age have got Donald Trump's crowd correspondent on the job up there in Mildura.
He does the best rallies, Rob.
Absolutely. Look, whatever it was a great crowd and it was a great game. Actually, surprisingly similar scoreline to the first game that I covered, the Fish Creek one.
Yep.
Imperials 5-11-47 to Wentworth 6-8-44. So in this case, it was the team with the worst kicking who managed to fall over the line.
Mm.
I would love to know how many grand finals are decided are won by the team kicking 5 goals. That's not that many. Um,
Wouldn't have thought so.
I mean, I do remember the Uni Blacks going down in a grand final where the winner kicked 2 goals or 3 or something. Anyway, let's not talk about that. So let's talk about Imperials. They've gone from wooden spooners to premiers in 12 months. So that's very impressive. Um, yeah, tough for Wentworth. They did lose the first final to
Mm.
Irimple, and then they recovered really strongly to battle their way back into the grand final. Um, they had to win the semi-final, and then they had to win the preliminary final over Irimple again, which they did quite comfortably. Jared Brander was one of the best players for Wentworth on grand final day. He used to play for the GWS and West
West
Coast,
Coast. Yep.
and he's kicked five of Wentworth's 6 goals
Wow.
on the day. So that's a fair effort.
Massive
Um,
effort.
but Pete, Anthony McDonald Tippenwoody, one of one of the cult heroes of the AFL and certainly of the Essendon Footy Club for many, many years, has gone to play a bit of country footy with Imperials. and he was one of the best players on the day for Imperials. And I read a bit on the Sunraysia League website talking about what a fantastic addition he's been to that competition this year. He's brought a lot of fans in, brought a lot of excitement around the game. The quote was that he doesn't get a lot of the ball, but when he does, people sit up and take notice. Like he's just one of those mercurial players that you'd love to see going around in country footy. So Anthony McDonald-Tipungwuti kicked 2 goals in that flag win, and I did read a really, really nice article in The Age where the 8,000 crowd was referenced about a young lad from Cobden all the way down near Warrnambool whose team in the AFL is Essendon. And being 11 years old, he has not seen Essendon win a final. So that's a bit unfortunate. Not really. But anyway, a bit unfortunate for that young lad. His favourite player for Essendon when he was a young kid was Anthony McDonald-Tipungwuti, and he's convinced his family to drive him on the 12-hour return trip from Cobden to Mildura, and he's got to see his hero win a premiership. So people who think country footy, local footy doesn't matter, it absolutely does matter. People love it, and they love to get to see their heroes running around after AFL, and getting people involved in country footy like that is amazing. So good on that young lad and his family for driving him all the way.
That's incredible. I hadn't heard that, so that is incredible to hear. Are we sure, given the Age was boosting up the numbers, that the Age hasn't just, put a bit of mayo on that as well? Like maybe he came from Cobram or something like that, not Cobden. But that is incredible. Well, I'm glad they got the win, the Imperials as well now, because
yes, that's right.
You imagine a 12-hour road trip back to Cobden, having watched your hero lost the grand final, kicking 5-11. Like imagine if Wentworth kicked 7-7 and you lose by 2 points. Like So I'm glad for that young lad that it worked out, because hell, barracking for Essendon's got to be hard enough. So he probably doesn't need any more horrible news. But I do agree, it's incredible to see, Jared Brander, Anthony McDonald-Tipungwuti, the AFL players come back and give back to country footy, or just local footy in general, whether it's suburban footy or country footy. It's just really good to see.
It is, yeah. People really get around it, don't they?
People get around it. I wish more would do it. I wish more AFL footballers would maybe factor it into their schedule of maybe once I've finished here, I'll go play 1 or 2 years local footy. And because I think it adds so much to those communities, but football in general. Like there's such excitement when it comes things like that. And, I know that thinking even just like Vafa in the last couple of years, Rob, and some of the players that have played in the Vafa A grade or B grade whilst we've been involved with the Blacks. And, it is just great to see those players at centre stage. And I think I remember, and I could really, this was a number of years ago, so I could really butcher this stat. So please don't take this as gospel, but I thought I remember reading something that when Fev came to play for the Yarrawonga Pigeons, that the gate taking for round 1 in Fev's first game for Yarrawonga was greater than their gate takings for the grand final the season before. So he essentially drew a crowd bigger than what the grand final crowd draws in, which the grand final crowds are usually pretty big in themselves. He basically gave them their best gate taking they had for a long time. So things like that are incredible. It's even better when the players actually stick around, like they actually play. Like I think Fev ended up playing a fair bit of football there at Yarrawonga. Then I think he went over to maybe it was either Melton or Melton South, one of the Ballarat teams. I think he went to
Deer Park.
Was it Deer Park? He
played for Deer Park in the Western League. Yeah, he might have played for others too.
But I reckon he played in the Ballarat Footy League for a Melton team. I could be wrong on that again, but it's just great to see AFL footballers doing that, and I think it's something they should do more often. In all honesty.
Oh, it's something I love about Australian sport in general. I think we do that really quite well here. I think the focus on grassroots community football, and I mean it happens a bit in cricket occasionally too. You get some of the Test stars going. Ricky Ponting would go back and play for for Mowbray and Launceston and whatever. But you just can't imagine Cristiano Ronaldo popping down to his local club in Portugal and rolling out with the the Maryborough Castlemaine League equivalent club. It's just I mean I understand it's different, but in a way it's not. They're also heroes to young
Yeah.
kids in the same way, and
Mm.
you know, I think that's something I really love about it.
So lift your
So
game,
yeah,
Cristiano.
just wrapping up that Sunraysia League. So that's Imperial's 20th Sunraysia League flag, Pete.
Okay.
So I did look up that number. They're the most successful club in the Sunraysia League, with 20. So
Look out,
they're
Fish
a
Creek.
fair way ahead of the rest there.
Yeah,
But this one's going to be extra sweet for them having been bottom of the ladder in
definitely.
2023.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Rob, I also took a look at the Riddell District Footy League. So I know we mentioned it last week. They were coming into their grand final. It was the classic Riddell Bombers versus Wallen Magpies. So no better clash in footy, is there? It's got to be up there, the old Bombers v Magpies. Surely in any league, the Bombers v Magpies just has to be a big grudge match. So um, Riddell 15-12, 102 to Wallen 11-5, 71. So pretty decent kicking from both teams. Both teams managed to kick more goals than behinds. For Riddell, it only just looking at the play-by-play, it looked like one of those games where they got out to a nice sort of 3-4 goal buffer. And then Wallen just could never rein it in. Could never really get closer than sort of 3 goals down. Might kick a couple in a row, and then Riddle would come back and kick 2 or 3 in a row. And
Yeah.
they really didn't manage to sort of trouble Riddle in terms of getting up nice and close at any point in time. So I think the first quarter really set it up for Riddle, where they put themselves 20 points in front. And from there, that margin stayed fairly similar or consistent throughout. So that 20 to 30 points. Best on ground was given to Tommy Alchemade. I do apologise if I butchered his last name, but congratulations to him on winning the best on ground there for that game for Riddle. They won their last premiership in 2022, Riddle. So didn't win last season, but did win in 2022. So well done to them to getting back up after having missed out last season. Similar to my point with Trentham, yeah, certainly feel for Wallen. So 1985 was the last time Wallen won the top division. Now, I say that because back in the 90s, the 80s, 90s, the Riddle League actually had 2 divisions.
Oh wow.
So I haven't dug into a whole lot how many teams were in each division and who the teams were. But they did have 2 divisions. So their last premiership total was a Div 2 premiership in 1992. That's their last premiership as a club, but 1985 was their last sort of senior premiership, and it was around the 90s that I think the league came together and put them all back into just one division across the board. So, but I do feel for them in 2021. So the season that was impacted by COVID, where a lot of leagues got to play maybe half the season before COVID really took hold again. Wallen was sitting on top of the ladder. They were sitting 9-1. You can only imagine whether the Wallen fans and stalwarts and volunteers and players sit back and think, oh, what could have been in 21 compared to what's happened in the last couple of years, where they've made finals the last couple of years but haven't been able to get that that victory on that last day in the season. So yeah, Wallen will have to go around again and see how they go. I think it'll be interesting to note whether Riddle sort of stay up. Riddle seem to have been pretty dominant over the last sort of few years. So sort of some interesting questions there from a Riddle league, who of course will also be having a a team join them. It looks like most likely in the coming season, Rob, with Melton South having gotten approval to travel into the Riddell League and play there. I think all it needs now is tick of approval from Ballarat Footy League and from AFL Vic. Look, I think from the whispers I'm hearing, I think it'll probably get the tick of approval from both. For Ballarat, I think it removes a bye for them. So it allows them to have, I think it's the 16 teams maybe, and play every single team once or twice, throughout the year, maybe once. I don't know. I'm making up rubbish now. But
well, if teams keep wanting to join the Riddle League, Pete, they might have to go back to having two divisions. I mean, they've had Kyneton join this season and Melton South next season. So, look, if more clubs want to join the Riddle League, Wallen might get their chance to win another Div 2 flag.
Maybe.
It sounds like they're up the top end of the ladder at the moment, but you never know.
Definitely. So, it'll be interesting to see how the Riddle League plays out for next season. I think as we mentioned them we've mentioned them in a couple of episodes, but we really deep dived in episode 1 when we looked at Kyneton. Without going back over old territory, I think you've just got to say that the Riddle League must be doing something right, because teams are wanting to join. I think that's probably a good a sign as any, isn't it? That you've probably got things going pretty well.
Yeah. Can't argue with that.
Where are we off to next, Rob?
So we're going northeast, Pete. So while you had your multiple live streams going, I have to say I didn't need any live streams going because you were providing me with all the updates I needed. That was fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The live streams were then being transmitted straight to my WhatsApp. But I did sit down. About halfway through the afternoon and had a little peruse around YouTube, and I did find a live stream from the Tallangatta District Football League up there in God's country in the foothills of the mountains up there in northeastern Victoria. Gee, that's some beautiful places up there, and look, some of the greatest place names in Australia or in the world are up there with Tallangatta and Yakandanda and Tangambalanga, and there's so many. I probably butchered that, but look, there's just so many good places. The grand final, the grand final in the Tallangatta District League was played at the Sandy Creek Recreation Reserve, which you informed me it doesn't actually have play during the season until the finals, maybe the grand final.
The finals.
So that was interesting. Yeah.
Yep.
So it's like a league home ground, but it's an absolute beauty. I mean, the coverage, the coverage was very impressive, I have to say.
Yeah.
Kudos to the Tallangatta District League for their YouTube coverage. The commentary was really good. They knew all the players. They had good camera work, better camera work than the AFL goal review system. Not that that'd be hard. And they had a fantastic moment at the end of the game where I've forgotten his name, unfortunately, but the boundary rider for the TDFNL coverage whipped off his jumper and exposed the Yakandanda jumper underneath and declared that the lead was off because at that point they'd kicked away in the last quarter, and Pete Yakandanda went on to beat Chilton in that grand final 10-11, 71 to 7-5, 47. That margin looks bigger than probably the game felt to me watching it. Yakandanda did, they kicked out a little bit in the last quarter. They came home with the breeze, which was always going to be a big advantage. And but it was pretty close up until three-quarter time. Best on ground was Zach Leach. Zach Leach had lost his name in the last quarter. He was simply the big fella, according to the coverage, which is something that we love.
That's great.
Yeah. B fella kicked a couple of goals in the last quarter. He was unstoppable. He was playing in the ruck, and apparently He won the league medal as well. He'd won that league medal in the vote count earlier in the week. So a big week for the big fella Zach Leach. Kicked 3 goals, 2 of them in the last quarter, and one of those was the sealer that really snuffed out any chance that Chiltern had of getting back into that game. First flag for Yackandandah since the year 2000.
Nice.
So a 24-year drought broken for them. And they also made pretty significant history by winning all of the 5 available football premierships, plus a netball premiership on the day. Now, tough day for Chiltern in the football, but I should note they actually won the A-grade netball flag, and that's their first ever A-grade netball flag in the Tallangatta District Football Netball League. So a bit of consolation there for Chiltern. But as the commentators on the coverage noted, there probably would not have been enough beer in Yackandandah to satisfy the needs of 5 football premiership teams and a netball premiership team. Mate, that's a pretty small town, but that would have been absolutely bouncing on Saturday night.
That would have been incredible. I've been to Yackandandah a few times through work. It's a gorgeous part of the world, as you rightly mentioned. It is God's country. But I can imagine, like Yackandandah, they probably haven't gone to sleep yet. They're probably still partying, aren't they? Like five football premierships, which are all that are on offer, and a netball premiership. There's something in the water there at Yackandandah, apparently, or maybe something in the beer. And maybe that's why they're doing so well. But that's incredible. So well done to Yak there. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe Chiltern were the informed team of the season as well. They were probably the ones to beat going into grand final day, Chiltern.
I think you're right. I think it was pretty close up the top of the ladder between Chiltern and Yackandandah. But Chiltern were the reigning premiers, so they certainly had that momentum as well, and the experience of having won it before. But Yak were too strong in the final series, and definitely too strong when it counted in that last quarter.
Yeah, so full credit, and look, I think it's funny you mentioned that, but some of the live streams that you and I were watching over the weekend. It's a credit to the leagues and to the people, the commentators that set them up and that do them, because some of them have been incredible. It's been really great. I think it's a good thing. Like think about what we used to do to try and get these scores. It was watching halftime Channel 7 for the footy to get the country footy scoreboard, and they quickly wiped through all the scores, and I must admit that's where I fell in love with some of these clubs that I have zero affiliation with, outside of the fact that I love just hearing him say "See Lake Nan Daily 9-10." Like that's all that got me around some of these clubs. So but it is, I love how far we've come.
Likewise.
In that we get to watch a grand final between Yak and Chiltern to see who wins, and from all reports the coverage was incredible. So I do just want to give a quick shout out to whoever did the Div 1 filming for VAFA Paran versus Parkside. Full credit to that cameraman. It didn't sound like they were undercover. It rained, it hailed. Then the sun came out. Then it rained a little bit more. It was like full credit to whoever had to cover that game, because it must have been awful. They did an incredible job. My favorite part was the hail came in. It was super strong. You could barely see what was happening just from the rain. But then the rain had gotten all over the lens. And the lens had gone out of focus, because it was instead focusing on the rain droplets that were on the lens, as opposed to the football past it. So a couple of little, trying to clean the screen to get it to focus in again. But I think just on that, just incredible work by all of those leagues that are now starting to show a lot more footy with their live streams. It's really good to see.
Absolutely, and it's stuff like that that allows us to to do this. It gives us more access and more coverage, and yeah, getting local footy to more people is so important. You know, we've talked a bit about how, in some ways, local footy is struggling, and no doubt we'll talk more about that in the future. But it's actually a really good point to make mention and acknowledge the fact that in some ways, local footy is doing as good as it ever has, and the kind of exposure that it's getting through these live streaming options is really the best thing that could happen, because it keeps people's attention on how important this is and also how good the footy is.
Yeah,
You know,
a lot of good
yeah,
footy going around Victoria.
absolutely, yeah. And this is the lifeblood of our great game. You know, if we don't have local footy, we don't have AFL.
No,
So
100%.
we need to value it.
100%, Rob. And yeah, I mean, we want more media access. So Rob's been pushing Roaming Rob, similar to Roaming Brian. So, you know, you want to get into the rooms and start interviewing blokes you've never met before, but we'll get there. We also just wanted to do some special mentions, Rob. So we don't necessarily have time to cover them within Siren Summaries.
Yeah.
But just some special mentions from some of the other grand finals that have been played. Morong Football Club in the Loddon Valley Footy League just won their third in a row on the weekend.
Yep.
They've developed into a nice little footy factory out there in Morong. Fun fact, our good old friend Jared Harris is involved there at the club at Morong.
There you go.
I think he's involved in the twos team. They actually lost the grand final, but I think their twos team were going for three in a row as well, but came up
Right.
a little bit short. So, but no doubt they still had a good time celebrating the ones. So credit to the Morong team there, and you know, no doubt they'll be looking to go the four-peat next season.
Absolutely. Yeah. Heading back down into Gippsland, Pete, I did see that Woodside won their first premiership in 50 years. That's a pretty incredible achievement. So they've won the flag in the North Gippsland Footy League, and they defeated Traralgon United (TTU) by 31 points there. Now, the really interesting story, Woodside, doing a little bit of research here, I'd discovered that they were, until fairly recently, part of the longest amalgamation name in probably the history of local football. The Devon, Welshpool, Wanron, Woodside Allies. Now, they used to play in the Alberton League with Fish Creek, who we mentioned at the top of the show. They used to play in the Alberton League as well.
Correct.
And I'm pretty sure that this alphabet soup of a club was called DWs. They were colloquially known as DWs. Now, DWs, or the Allies, they actually won a premiership in 2002 in the Alberton League. But with the disbanding of the Alberton League and the amalgamation of the Western clubs into a West Gippsland League and clubs in North Gippsland into a North Gippsland League, and then the rest basically into the Mid Gippsland League, Woodside have actually done something really unusual. They've come out of an amalgamation and returned to be a standalone club.
Wow.
Yeah, so you don't very often hear of a club that's gone into a merger. I mean, it's pretty rare to hear of a club going into recess and then back out. We know it has happened. Kyneton and Campbell's Creek come to mind. But yeah, clubs going into a merged arrangement and then coming out of it. So they've done that, Woodside, and they hadn't won a flag as a standalone club in Woodside since 1974. So congratulations to them.
Yeah. Credit to them.
That's a fantastic achievement. Firstly, to come out of affiliation with all of these other clubs and get back on their own feet, and then for the premiership. So
yeah,
that's a great season there from Woodside. No longer DWs, but just W.
Very good.
I thought I'd also mention, Pete, there was a big come from behind win down in the Mindanera League down in the southwest. So Penshurst Bombers, they won their first flag in 12 years. Not quite as long a premiership drought as Woodside, but still impressive. That was a 5-point win over Wycliffe Lake Bolac. And there's a few AFL players getting around that had big wins. We mentioned Anthony McDonald, Tip and Woody, but it was a North Melbourne reunion over at Healesville this weekend. Aaron Edwards kicked 3 goals, and Levi Greenwood was best on ground for Healesville in their premiership win over Warburton Millgrove. That's Division 1 of the Outer East League.
Okay.
The Premier Division of the Outer East League grand final is coming up this weekend.
Okay.
I've forgotten who's in that, but maybe we can have a look at that one next week.
Next week, yep.
And one of our favourite, actually maybe two of our favourite club names, you've already mentioned Sea Lake Nandaly. They won the premiership in the North Central Footy League over Birchip Watcham. We've definitely got to come back to the North Central Footy League because they've got some outstanding names out there.
Classic names.
Sea Lake Nandaly Tigers, 13 points over Birchip Watcham, who also get a mention in the weirdest local football jumpers as well. The Mallee Bulls, who wear Fremantle jumpers. Old style Fremantle jumpers.
Yeah, we'll definitely
Patrick,
we'll definitely need to cover the North Central at some point because they've got a lot going for them. I think Japarrett Rainbow are in that one as well.
Not anymore.
Where are Japarrett Rainbow these days?
Japarrett Rainbow are actually part of the Southern Mallee Thunder that now play in the Wimmera League. I think we might cover them in a bit more detail when we look at mergers.
That's disappointing because North Central always, Sea Lake Nandaly, Birchip Watcham, Japarrett Rainbow,
Walpia Bundabull.
It was I got
Donald.
around.
even the most boring name is great.
It just because it gets lifted by all the other names. It's not it's no longer just Donald. It's Donald. So we'll certainly have to cover that in more detail.
Yep, indeed. So Patrick Vespremi was playing for Birchip Watcham in that game. He was in the best. Yeah, formerly of your Western Bulldogs and also Sydney. And Josh Jenkins was the big name star, the big player point star there for Sea Lake Nandaly. Did kick a goal. Wasn't in the best I saw, but hey, premiership for the Tigers there.
Similar to his Adelaide career then.
Except for the premiership part.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really
Except for the important bit.
Except for the important bit. No, well, he's a good man, Josh Jenkins. I know he's really into his country, not only country footy, but he's into his country trots racing as well.
There you go,
Josh Jenkins. So
he looks like a country lad.
He does. He looks like just from what I've seen of him, I've never personally met him, but from what I've seen of him, he looks like a ripping fella. So no doubt he had fun there with the Sea Lake Nandaly boys as they celebrated that win.
Probably drunk the Sea Lake dry or something.
Probably. So.
Now, Pete, we've got our Paddock to Premiership segment coming up. I unfortunately have bowed out of this in the sense that all of my picks have fallen at their finals hurdles. I've already gone through the Sunraysia League where I was watching Irimple and Imperials got the job done there. Now, you are potentially on the hook. You put yourself on the hook potentially for a long drive up to the Ovens and Murray grand final if North Albury could make it. And to be honest, I've been on tenterhooks all week wondering whether I'm going to have to join you on a road trip to watch the Hoppers. So tell me, how are we looking?
Well, Rob, what's amazing is when you say something like a throwaway line like that, I think there's been more people than what I would assume have listened to the whole of the episode and taken out one key takeaway from it, which is if the Hoppers win, are you going up to watch the Ovens and Murray grand final? The amount of people that actually mentioned that to me was, well, great to hear that people are listening to the episodes, but B, also worrying because I was hoping no one would necessarily pick me up if I didn't. Look, I got to the point, Rob, where I actually looked up where the grand final was being played the following week.
Yeah.
Now, it was being played in Lavington, which is
Oh, that's a
actually,
long way.
almost further than Albury. So you're actually going past Albury pretty
Yeah,
much
that's in New South Wales.
to get out to Lavington. So I sort of thought, oh, wow, might have really saddled myself with a silly decision here. So they went up against the Wangaratta Rovers. Look, there's been a lot of positivity around the North Albury Hoppers. So saw a lot of footage throughout the week of a lot of their players getting recognised for the season they had. So I think I'd mentioned Josh Minogue, the big goal kicker. He was certainly getting recognised within the league for what he was doing there with the goal kicking bags. They were also just being recognised, I think, as similar to Imperials in the Sunraysia League. It's one of those clubs that's probably not had a whole lot of success in recent memory.
Mm.
And just the joy I think it was bringing to the people within that club that they were getting up. They had some really good footage on the Ovens and Murray Facebook page of basically a camera that is looking directly at the fans as the final siren goes in their big win, their big 2-point win over the Wang Magpies the week before. Unfortunately, Rob, it's not to be. We won't be heading up to Lavington unless we want to go watch the Wang Rovers play against Yarrawonga, which not particularly. Albeit
I
that should
would
be,
if Bev was playing.
albeit that should be a cracking match because both teams are really, really good. But in saying that, Rob, you talk about on tenterhooks. The Hoppers were up at half time, so
Hmm.
the Hoppers were up by a couple of points at half time. Sort of started thinking, all right, I probably need to plan out what my next weekend looks like because I might be in the car for a bit going up to Lavington. Unfortunately, for my Hoppers, the Premiership quarter struck, and I think we've spoken a little bit in the last couple of episodes about teams that have had good Premiership quarters. I think it was Torquay last week in their final had a really good Premiership quarter against Anglesea in the grand final. Well, it was 7-2 to 1-2 to the Wang Rovers in that Premiership quarter. And unfortunately, they couldn't bridge the gap from that. So Wang Rovers win by 35 points. Pretty much most of that 35 points comes in that third quarter.
Yeah.
So pretty disheartening there for the Hoppers. Look, I'm full on the Hoppers. I'm hopeful that they'll get on with it next year. Do some a few more recruits. Let's get Josh some support. Let's feed him the ball. He's clearly a goal kicking machine. I want him kicking a ton next season. And yeah, if they make the grand final next season, I'll be there. If the North Albury Hoppers ever make the grand final, I'll be at the game. So hopefully they can get it done, but not the end I wanted for my Paddock to Premiership for the Hoppers. We spoke a little bit about the success that I was picking with my Paddock to Premiership. Well, it all come to a grinding halt, unfortunately, Rob. So I had Bungaree in the grand final last weekend in the Central Highlands League. They were playing against Daylesford. Bungaree had beaten them earlier in the year, and the one time they played them by 12 points.
Hmm.
Bungaree had been the form team of the comp. I think they'd only dropped one game to Skipton throughout the season. Now, Saturday was not a great day for footy. It was wet, it was windy, it was cold, it was chilly. I did say on the episode last week that I was thinking about going out to this game and you were thinking about potentially joining me. I took one look at the forecast and went, oh, I think I'll probably sit at home and watch footy on the laptop and all of my different live streams that I was updating you on. And look, it was windy and wet and cold everywhere. Imagine what it was like in Ballarat, which is where they were playing this game at Mars Stadium. But like ripping deck to play on though. I think if you're going to play a grand final, it'd be nice to play on a ground that's set up for AFL games. But Daylesford got the 4 points. They defeated Bungaree by 27 points in the end. It was 3-5-23 to 7-8-50, so probably just gives you a bit of an indication of
Yeah.
the
Conditions.
havoc and that the weather played there, pretty low scoring across the board. Bungaree did win the reserves grand final, maybe just to soften the blow a little bit. So not all
Bit of
lost
consolation.
there for Bungaree. I do wonder, that's got to be difficult, doesn't it? Like they did have they have a function back at the Bungaree rooms after the games. Like it's got to be hard because you imagine you got two blokes that are absolutely up and about, and
Yeah.
one's blokes that go, I don't want to be here. Get me out. I got no interest in being here. So I reckon that's got to be tough. But hopefully the ones got around the fact that the twos guys got the job done for Bungaree. So look, Bungaree have probably been set up to have a real crack at the grand final in the Premiership the last couple of seasons. It hasn't happened in the last couple of seasons. I'm really interested to see where they go from here as a club. They've clearly got the talent. They show that throughout the season. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know where that leaves them in terms of going into 2025. It'll be. I haven't really spoken. I did send a couple of messages to my mate just to say commiserations and basically just said get on the beers and forget about it. But I haven't sort of bugged him too much as to what the plan is. What the plan is next season for Bungaree. I don't know. I might flick him a message and say come to the Blacks because he does live in Melbourne. So maybe see if he wants to roll around for us in the Vatha. But yeah, I suppose when you've had a real crack at it for 2 years in a row and haven't gotten the chockies, where's that leave you?
No, it's true. It is difficult. Bit of a similar situation for a lot of clubs going around. Wallen, you mentioned, have been up there for a bit, and we know Trentham have been up there for a while, and Wentworth have been up the top end of the ladder in the Sunraysia League for a while and haven't quite got there. So, yes, I'm sure that's a very common story. Daylesford won their first flag for 12 years, so that's good for them.
Correct.
And I did read that the best on ground was Travis Dean for Daylesford Bulldogs. That name ring a bell, Pistol?
It does not, should it?
Former Sheffield Shield cricket captain of Victoria.
Oh, okay, so I just didn't even have my cricket hat on. So I was thinking, does it
No.
ring a bell football wise? But now that you
Yeah.
say that, yes, it does ring a
Yeah.
bell.
So there you go. Someone who's pretty handy at football and cricket. We love
Yeah,
that. The old
and I
Craig Bradley, Sheffield Shield, and it's Travis Dean's not playing AFL, but
yeah,
still an
I
impressive
do.
effort.
I do know the Daylesford team as well have lots of Cummings going around. So
Okay.
I remember. I think Michael might have played, and there might have been another Cummings that played, but that's a familiar name to me from a Castlemaine perspective because we previously had their brother Ken Cummings play at
Yeah.
Castlemaine for a few years.
Yeah.
If the brothers are anything like Ken, then ripping footballers certainly know how to find the big sticks. So
Yeah.
so they had a pretty decent side in Daylesford. So
Yeah.
maybe a shame that the conditions were so awful because both teams look to have had really good lists in. It might have been an absolute cracking game if they could have played it on a dry deck without hail.
Yeah. But I guess to be honest, if you want to play football on dry decks, you don't go into the Central Highlands Footy League, do you? And you
No,
certainly don't. And you certainly don't look to play your grand final in Ballarat. I mean, you never
no,
know.
no, that's a good point. But I don't think you can discount that at all. Like I think
Not a dry deck league.
it's not a dry deck league. No, it's not. Yeah, so that's our Paddock to Premiership done for the year, Rob. But
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see. We'll do some more grand final wrap ups next week as well. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see who gets up in the matches that still have grand finals left to play.
Yes.
I did have a look. I can't remember what league, but there is a league that their grand final, I think I read, was like a couple weeks away, maybe. I'd have to go back and look who that was. But there was a league that I don't believe is playing their grand final this weekend.
The VAFA A grade, of course, is playing their grand final on the Friday public holiday pre-AFL grand final. But
Yeah, so I think there's another one that I
yeah,
can't remember what league. I was looking through all of the leagues earlier. I would have to try and find it again, but we might be coming back for a one more episode to do one league grand
yeah,
final. But I also just wanted to make note before we do finish up. You did mention the grand final a few years back for the Blacks that was sort of two goals that were kicked on a muddy deck. And I believe you actually managed to find another grand final deck on the weekend that was played in an absolute mud pit.
yeah. You're right. We commented earlier on the standard of the camera work and the coverage, which has been great across all of the different platforms. The Eastern Footy Netball League for I think it was their Division Two grand final, might have wished to find some grainier footage, just so as not to showcase the state of that field. Um, yes, I haven't done my research as to exactly where that was, but yeah, look, I cannot believe that there was not a better ground for that game to be played on, just as in 2022. Yes, how the Uni Blacks and Old Haileybury couldn't be shifted to another venue and time, and
Yeah.
out of the mudslide down at Elstonwick Park. But let's hope the weather finds up a little bit for the grand finals that are coming up this weekend, Pistol.
Let's hope.
It's going to be another big weekend of footy. We'll look forward to bringing you more results next week, and then, as you say, whichever grand finals are remaining after that. So yeah, look, we hope that your teams had a win. We hope your teams in the Paddock to Premiership are getting the 4 points, so to speak, or maybe get winning the Premiership. And look, we hope that your weekend coming up is just as good as Yak and Danders would have been last weekend. And we will see you next week.
See you next week.